Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting Circuit Stream workshop and webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Just before I do continue on, I'd love to do a quick AV audio visual check with everyone here that is in the audience. So do let me know to the right there if you can hear me and see me. Hello, Dayon. Hello, Jason. Hello, and hi, Kate, Abdi, Salah, and Emiliano, Kate, Travis, Stacy. I see Francois is also right in, Hamzi, Margaret. Thank you all for letting me know that you can all hear me and see me. I'd hate to continue on without anyone actually being able to see or hear anything that we're doing. But today's super exciting. Today we'll be diving into an introduction to Unity 3D development, going over Unity Engine fundamentals and terrain controls with myself and especially with my colleague, XR instructor, Usman Mir. And I'll introduce him here in a minute. Now, if you are having some, issues with the screen, whatever it may be, do refresh it. Sometimes that helps. If you're having any other AV issues, refreshing the screen tends to solve the issues. But let us know in the chat, and we'd be happy to try and troubleshoot things with you there. Now, I do love asking on all these workshops and webinars, where is everyone currently tuning in from? Let me know where you're currently located. I myself am in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, up in the Great White North. No snow yet, but we're getting there slowly. I see people from the London, UK, Boston, Massachusetts, Kansas, London, Calgary as well. Ali, welcome. Minnesota, Portland, Wales as well, Scotland, Toronto, Regina, Saskatchewan, San Diego. So fairly international audience today. We tend to have people joining us from all over the world. Asia, Europe, the Middle East, North America, South America, you name it. And great to see some international folks here as well. So, few housekeeping items before I kick things off. To the right there, you do see a chat box. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves, toss in LinkedIn profiles to network and connect. Add some comments if you would like, supporting people's questions. But on the topic of questions, there is a tab to the right of the chat tab. There's a questions tab. If you have any questions, please do toss them into the questions tab. This helps us organize what questions we haven't answered, especially in the Q&A session at the very end of this workshop and webinar. Happy to answer any and all questions around Unity, VR, AR, game development. Toss it in. We'd love to cover it with you at the end of this presentation. Now, beside the questions tab, there is also a polls tab. So I'll be tossing in polls throughout this workshop and webinar just to gauge the experience of the audience. And if you'd like, you can go to the polls tab right now, and I'm actually going to publish a poll just so you can all see what that looks like. Curious to know, what devices do you own? Now, most of these devices that I'm sharing here are devices for VR and AR, but let me know if you have an Android phone, iPhone, if you've got, I don't think PC or Mac is kind of listed there at the moment, but it looks like we've got few people with an Oculus Quest. Most people have iPhones, one with the Rift HTC Vive Pro, few iPhones, some Android phones as well. I moved from iPhone to Android. Not sure how I'm liking it so far. It's not too shabby. But yes, I see Stacy comment in the chat. I have to leave early. Will this be recorded and sent? Yes, this all will be recorded and sent to you afterwards. So without further ado, let's kick things off. Today we'll be going over an introduction to 3D development with Unity. And this is what the agenda and breakdown looks for this workshop. I myself will take about 10 minutes or so to do an introduction, who we are, what we do here at Circus Stream. Then I'll invite my colleague Ozzy onto the stage to do the deep dive inside Unity, how to work with it and create your own 3D experiences. Well, then I'll then come back after those 30, 45 minutes to wrap things up with some resources, 5 to 10 minutes there, and then we'll open it up for our live Q&A session at the very end of this workshop. And that's going to take 15, 30 minutes. Sometimes takes longer depending on the questions we get, but we love answering all those questions. So please don't hesitate to toss any questions in that questions tab. And as Stacy asked, this is all recorded and the recording will be sent out to you. Both the project files that we work with today and all the resources will be emailed to you afterwards as well. So feel free to sit back, relax, observe, watch, ask questions. If you'd like to try and follow along, feel free. we are covering quite a bit of content within the hour. So don't feel like you need to follow along. You will get all of this to slow it down, work with it afterwards, pause, play as you will. So, quick introduction for myself. My name is Stefan. I'm on the partnerships team here at Circuit Stream. I have over several years of experience in the tech industry working with travel IT companies, learning management system providers, business integration and ERP platforms, and now in the beautiful world of real time 3D technology, virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And an icebreaker fact I like to always mention about myself on these workshops and webinars, I was a member of Water Polo Canada, trained with the 2008 Beijing Olympic team. I was still a wee lad and boy before, so I never actually went to the Olympics. But with that, was able to use those skills to great use. Saved a drowning couple in Mexico once. They were stuck out. The current swept them the way. I went in, got the lady, pulled her in, went out, picked up the guy, and then that's when the lifeguard came out and dragged us both in. But nonetheless, some great skills to always have, the swimming there. And today it's an honor and a pleasure to have my colleague Usman or Ozzy Mir joining me today and leading the technical portion of this presentation. Ozzy is our lead instructor and XR developer here at Circuit Stream. He himself has over 10 years of Unity experience, several years of AR and VR development, and an icebreaker fact about Ozzy. He himself has been a member of a jazz band, specifically playing the drums. So if there are any other musicians out there, feel free to give Ozzy a shout, ask questions. I'm sure he'd love to speak to that a little bit more as well. So a little bit about us here at Circuit Stream. Who are we? Well, Circuit Stream was started in 2015 when we noticed a gap in helping people learn how to build VR, AR games, whatever it may be from scratch using engines like Unity. And since 2015, we've had the pleasure to reach over 40,000 people through our courses, programs, workshops, webinars, and much more as well. Now, Circuit Stream is also a Unity certified training and channel partner, and partners are approved based on their expertise, focus on quality education, and commitment to providing the highest level of training available. Now, these are just some of the experts and credentials that we have here at Circuit Stream, such as Ozzy, Jerry, a lot of other instructors, certified expert programmers, professional programmers, and authorized training partners as well. Now, these are just some of the people and companies that we've had the pleasure to teach real-time 3D technology, VR and AR design and development from Apple, YouTube, Snapchat, Nike, various universities and post-secondary institutions, even Hershey's, the chocolate company. You best believe that chocolate's going to be delicious with the new technology they're using. And it's honestly been a pleasure and an honor to have people from all walks of life joining our courses and programs. Now, on the topic of academic offerings, I'm going to dive into our courses and programs here, but stick to the end. We are offering special offers up to 50% off on a course, others discounted as well. So stick to the end for more information if you're interested in hearing more about the offers that we're going to be mentioning here at the end of this workshop. But for those of you tuning in to this Intro to 3D Development with Unity workshop, this is likely a course that you might have your eyes on. All of our courses and programs are live and online. We have one called the Introduction to Unity 3D Development course. Unity should really interest anybody who wants to easily create 3D games and applications for mobile, desktop, the web, and consoles. And this project-based course is 8 weeks long, live and online, and it offers an introduction to Unity and walks you through creating your first real-time application, real-time 3D application, a bowling game, I believe, while focusing on the major Unity systems. And this course will prepare you to earn a Unity certified user certificate as well. And I'll touch up on that a little bit towards the end of the presentation too. And then we have our two other flagship courses, our XR development with Unity course, as well as our interaction design and prototyping for XR program. The XR development course, just that, goes into VR and AR development inside Unity, how to build VR and AR experiences from scratch, focusing on scripting, C# coding, programming, and other development tactics. Now, our interaction design and prototyping for XR course is a little different. It doesn't go into coding, programming, or scripting, but more so focuses on prototyping VR and AR experiences from scratch, user experience, how that all works, storyboarding for building these projects and applications. And again, I'll dive into depth about these ones here, but they're both 10 weeks long with up to 8 hours of live instruction per week as well. And what kind of differentiates us from the other providers out there? Well, it's the live mentorship and one-on-one support that comes with our courses and some of the bundles that we offer. And really, this is where we sit down privately with you, help work together to build out any ideas and projects that you may have, focus on any learning needs that you want, really spending the time one-on-one to get to know what you need to build out, what your needs are, and helping you support those needs there. And we do also provide Circuit Stream team training opportunities. So if you're with a team, a group of colleagues, looking to invest into XR, bringing this back to the workplace, upskilling some engineers, designers into the world of VR and AR, we do offer these opportunities as well if anyone is interested. So now that you've learned a little bit about us here today, what are you going to learn on this workshop and webinar? Well, today we'll be going over the Unity editor, so user interface and the main tools used as well. We'll also be covering how to make simple physics, specifically with rigid bodies, the close inspection and use of terrain tools, so building a nature landscape together, and basic simple scripting and physics. So essentially, we'll be getting you and giving you the blueprint on how to start any 3D development project in Unity. And I just want to share, some examples of what people are actually working on and building. All beginners joining our courses and programs interested in AR, VR, the industry, real-time 3D gaming and design. We've got people building their own terrains and experiences just like this, something that we'll be showing you quickly on this workshop and webinar. To other people building some challenges that we present to them in the courses, different types of robots. We got the two Nicks here, Mark and Sky as well, and even going into the fundamentals of C# scripting in the XR development course. We have a C# course specifically as well. But just goes to show, how important C# and coding can be inside Unity when you're trying to build some interactions and other more complicated systems within your experience there. Now, I do want to ask you all to go to the polls tab here, because I'm going to toss in another poll here. I'm curious to know, and I ask this on all the workshops and webinars, how much Unity experience do you have on a scale of 0 to 10? So I just published the poll there. Let me know. 0, never heard of Unity before. 10 being the Jedi Master Chuck Norris of Unity. So let me know. We've got quite a few beginners, around the 1, 0, 1 range, some 3s, 2s. We got a 4 here as well. So the vast majority of people here are considered as beginners, which is great. This is an introduction to 3D development with Unity. So perfect. This content will be tailored just well. Now, for those of you who said 0, maybe even 1, what is Unity? Well, Unity is a free 3D development engine for building games, simulations, and experiences. It's the easiest way to begin making apps and projects for games, any type of artistic work as well, film, TV production, but XR as well. And XR stands for extended reality, which is an umbrella term that captures VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality, and you can even say MR, mixed reality as well. Just a nice simple term to capture the entire industry there as well. Now, for those of you, again, who are new to Unity, Unity is actually used to create over 60% of the world's real-time 3D content and applications, games and VR and AR experiences. And that's why one of the reasons why we focus on Unity here at Circuit Stream, helping share one of the most widely used tools in the market, in the industry, what people are really working to create, and even what companies are looking for nowadays as well. Now, Unity's impact is truly global. Now, it said 3 billion is the times apps are developed by Unity creators that are downloaded per month. 3 billion downloads per month. And Unity creators live and work in over 190 countries around the world as well. So really a global reach to not only, us here in the audience today, but people all over the world as far as Asia and so on. And learning Unity skills is really an advantage. They say 601% demand growth for Unity and real skills a couple of years ago. There was 57% projected Unity developer job growth over the next 3 years. In 2020, they said, actually 2019 possibly, they said 1.1 million US programming jobs were expected to go unfulfilled. And with that, 1,400% projected AR/VR job growth in 2020. And it said those with Unity skills are expected to earn or have an increase in salary of about $20,000. So, not only great to learn for a personal interest, but a professional interest as well. Now, how does someone actually go about creating their first, Unity project, game, experience, whatever it may be? I'm going to give you this example for VR and AR specifically, right? You have an idea, you bring it into a creation engine like Unity. That's where you develop and design your idea there. And then you push it out to whatever device and platform you want it for, right? So you've got the idea, you build it inside Unity. Chances are you're going to use a software development kit, SDK for something, and then you push it out to the device, PCs, headsets, iPhones, Android phones, whatever it may be. But that's typically how the workflow looks like for those interested in creating their own experiences. So let's get this show on the road. I'd love to take this time to introduce my colleague Ozzy onto the stage here. Again, it's a pleasure and an honor to have Ozzy join me on this workshop and webinar. Hey, Ozzy, it's been a long time since we've been here together hosting a workshop. Super excited.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while. Just started hosting these workshops this week, actually.
Yeah.
The last one was on Tuesday.
It's been a long time, but it's great to see you back here. It's great to have you here with me. And you're all in great hands right now. So Ozzy's going to take about 30 to 45 minutes really showing you how to kickstart your first 3D Unity project. If you have questions, toss them into the questions tab. We're going to cover those at the very end for you all. But again, you're all in great hands with Ozzy. I'm going to be backstage as well. I'll be back in about 30, 45 minutes to wrap things up. And I'll see you all soon. So, Ozzy, take it away.
Thank you. Let me share my screen and just get a confirmation that that is working. Let's see here. All right, there we go. And another confirmation on whether or not that's really legible, because it may help us to... Oh, there's a lot of stuff open for some reason.
Great. It's good that you're asking. Yeah.
Decrease the resolution of my screen to make things a bit bigger. So I'll just double check on that.
Perfect. And as you're doing that, I want to let everyone in the audience know if you do need to full size your screen, there is the option at the bottom. Should be an option somewhere at the bottom where you can highlight it and bring it out or in. Similarly, if you're hearing pop up from bubbles, sounds from the chat, you can mute the chat. But just looking at this, Ozzy, doesn't look too bad. It's a little pixelated on my end, but let's see if I increase the screen. That resolution change helps. Thanks anytime, Andy.
Okay, great.
Looks good for me. Yeah, looks good. But again, for if there are any resolution issues, let us know. Streaming this type of stuff tends to be a little bit hard through this platform, but hopefully it's smooth. Let us know if you do have issues. Refresh. You can increase the size of your screen as well. You can hide the sidebar at the bottom or enter full screen mode. So I'll step back. I'll let you guys go. Have fun, and I'll tune in shortly.
All right. Thank you, Steph. All right, everyone. Let's begin. I wanted to kind of show off a little bit of what we'll be kind of aiming for. So for our terrain scene, this is kind of the idea. Get some fundamental knowledge as to how you can create this environment and see kind of how you would implement grass textures and what Unity does to kind of optimize your scene. As you can see that disappear, how to apply these textures. and kind of fudge some effects. So that's one of the goals of today's session. But before we start, I would like to give a little teaser, especially to the more experienced devs out there, about some shaders and VFX graph stuff. If you stick around during the Q&A section, I can definitely cover that kind of thing. And there's a lot of fun ones out there that we can talk about. As you can see, so many unique effects you can create with a lot of things that don't actually require any or very little amount of coding. So nice little effect room I like to show, and I would definitely encourage you to stay during the Q&A period where we can talk about that stuff a little bit. But until then, let's go back to our original scene. This will be the project I'm working in. But the first thing that's the most important I introduce is the Unity Hub. So this thing here is the first thing you'll open when you launch Unity for the first time. You'll be opening the Unity Hub. Now, the Unity Hub is a great place to manage your Unity projects and multiple versions of Unity. This one is saying 2019. There we go. So there's 2020, 2019, and so forth. Now, let's come back to this section momentarily. I want to show you guys the most important one, installs. So we go to the install section. It will show you all the Unity versions that you have on your computer. And one of the key things for this is you'll see the icons at the bottom of each version showing you the support that is provided on each version. Now, if you're developing for something like the Oculus Quest or an Android phone, you want this little icon here. And if you don't have it, what you would do, you would click on these three dots here, go to Add Modules, and then choose the platform you want to add support for. So WebGL is typically selected by default if you want to make web apps. And the interesting thing about this is you can make web AR and web VR applications as well. So anyone who's interested in the XR field, that's also a specialization that I have. That's kind of the stuff you'd cover in class as well. Now, with that said, I wanted Android build support so I could build to the Quest and to Android phones. So if I expand that, these are the things I would tick on. I would hit done and go through the installation. Now, if you don't want to wait to develop and you want to have this installing at the same time, open up your project, work on it, and then do this add module thing while it's open. So you can have both going at the same time. That's just a little pro tip kind of thing. But if you are going to add a new version of Unity, I would highly suggest you hit this add button instead of locate another one that you've already installed, because if you are locating a version of Unity, this add modules option does not exist. So add, that's the way to go. And if I do click add, I choose the version here, or I can go to the Unity archive where I can download much older versions of Unity. And whenever I want to install them, select Unity Hub. Do not pick one of these methods here. Just go to the hub. But yeah, I remember Unity 3. It has been a while. Okay, so with that said, let's take a look at the community tab. So community, this is an incredible resource for XR development and VR, just general Unity development. This is where I learned so much, especially these beautiful answer forms. Definitely worth checking out and learning when you are trying to create projects. So one of the best ways I find is try to create a very basic mechanic, make a very basic game, and expand on that. And then once you've done that, making games is a great incentive to learn. You can then start making training sims. You can make education tools. You can make any kind of application with Unity. But this is a great place to start, especially with the Unity blogs where they show you how to use particular features. So great tool within the Unity Hub, worth checking out. Same thing with Learn, a lot of nice projects to mess around with. I recommend everyone try out the Rollerball tutorial to get yourself started. And if we go to projects, this is where you're going to do most of your interaction. So here, you can go ahead and add an existing project. Perhaps you're moving your projects over to a different computer, that kind of thing. You can add them here. Or you can create a new project. Now, since I have multiple versions of Unity, I can click this little drop down and choose which version I want to work with. Sticking with 2020 for now, it's the most stable version, although I could go for the LTS. But when I do hit new, oh, and login is here, by the way, but when I hit new, I choose my Unity project, I would be offered some templates. Now, 3D and 2D, there's actually no difference. You'll see the actual option within Unity is very trivial. Here, there's a little button in Unity. You can switch from 2D to 3D. That's all it does. So those two templates are pretty much the same. The ones that are quite different is the high definition RP and the universal RP. These are different render pipelines. This is the legacy one that existed for a very long time. But the universal render pipeline is designed to be far more optimized than the legacy one. Now, this one is typically aiming to mobile development and the Oculus Quest. And high definition render pipeline, this is a very, very impressive looking platform here, this very impressive looking pipeline. And it's typically targeted towards desktop applications. You won't want to do something like web VR or anything like that either. But those are the main templates that you'll choose from. Now, there are some fun little projects that you can get started with to learn, but these are the main three that you'll want to focus on. Okay, so what we would want to do in this example is typically start a universal render pipeline project if you're working for the Oculus Quest. This is my favorite right now just because it's really nice. And then you can name your project, choose a file path where you want to install it, and so forth, and create your project. Once you've created your project, you will see a blank Unity project. If you're using URP, you'll see a project with some interesting scenes in it. So let me open up a new project here. Now, the scene you will most likely see when you launch a URP project, and let me not save that, is something like this. And let's go to our example asset. So this is the scene you'll come across, and I'm going to just set this layout to the default layout. There we go. So this is more like what you're going to see. You're going to see this nice little workshop scene set up. Now let's discuss these versions. Now, we have a question. In the latest version, there are more options like VR. What do you recommend we use for VR games? Now, that's a great question. However, I would still suggest you go with your URP, HDRP, or I wouldn't really use 3D anymore. But for VR, if it's desktop VR, you could get away with using HDRP, but you'd want it to be optimized. So it'll be a little bit of work there. But if you are doing VR for mobile, definitely want to use URP. Now, those other templates for VR, again, I wouldn't really use those. I would kind of avoid them to add like all the clutter that they add, and just go with a nice blank template. Matter of fact, even something like this, I would delete all the example assets and get them out of the way. Yes, mobile VR, definitely go for URP. That's just hands down what you want to do. HDRP, not meant for the Quest. That is way too demanding. All right, but you'll see something like this when you start your first project in URP. Regular 3D, it'll be blank. Now, thanks. Okay. Now, in our actual interface, I wanted to talk about what kind of these windows do and get into some techniques on how to navigate your scene, select objects, create objects, design terrains, these kinds of things. Now, in my project folder here, I do already have a bunch of projects, a bunch of folders just to have as use, but yours will likely only have maybe 5 folders. And if you went with 3D, maybe not even 2. So, but that's not important. What is important are what this interface shows. On the left side of my screen is something called the hierarchy window. This allows us to organize our objects in our scene as through a parent-child relationship, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But if you can see this big window in here, this is my scene. This is my scene view. This is where you as the developer can navigate around and you say, you know what, I don't like where this helmet is placed, for example. And you select that helmet and you decide, I'm going to move it somewhere else. And now you want a floating helmet, for example. And you decide, you know what, I don't want it floating in the ground. I'm going to move this little 3D model to somewhere else, and then you can use some snapping tools to snap it to the ground or whatnot. You can rotate it and reposition it in the scene. Oh, a little too much there. That kind of thing. So you can set your scene and you can program to make it behave the way you want, or you can use some of the many techniques available where you don't even need to code. So with that said, this is your scene view, you as the developer, but on the left, you can see whenever you select an object, there it is highlighted in your hierarchy window. So this lists every object in your scene. And an object, which in code would be referred to as a game object, actually is every item you see in this list, including something like the camera. So this camera, if I didn't have Gizmos on, it doesn't actually show anything. There's no mesh there. There's no visual. We just have these gizmos that give us icons that represent these for us. If you go to something like the game view, which is what the end user of your application would see, they don't show up. These gizmos, like this gizmo, represents your directional light. So if I was to select this gizmo and rotate this, you would see the sun set or the sun rise or become nighttime. These kinds of things. So these gizmos help us navigate the more complex parts of our environment. And this thing here is a reflection probe, allows you to create some mirroring effect on metallic objects. Won't bother getting into that too much, but that's the idea. Scene view, game view allows you to see what the end user is experiencing, and you can hit this little play button and just kind of walk through that. So if I hit play, I can kind of go through the experience that you've designed and enjoy that as the end user, so you can kind of feel that out. But yeah, so that's just a nice built-in testing method. Now, that's the scene, that's the game window, and we got our hierarchy. Let's talk about our inspector window on the right side. So currently I have nothing selected, but if I did, this window would light up with a bunch of information about that object, pretty much everything. So if I select, for example, the directional light, the thing that controls my sun. Now, this, apart from the gizmos that allow me to move the object around, rotate the object around, or scale it. However, scaling a light source doesn't actually do anything. But apart from that, you'll see the inspector window light up with a bunch of information. Now, everything is going to have some kind of transform, whether it's a rect transform or a regular transform. This is going to give you information about the position, rotation, and scale of an object. Now, when it comes to position, it's giving you the position in meters. So I'm sorry, all my imperial system friends, you're going to have to get used to this a little bit. It does use meters. Now, a meter is 3.5 feet, I believe. It's a little bit bigger than a yard. Now, the rotation is in degrees. Thank God we can all agree on that. But the scale is relative. Now, I could create a 3D model in some 3D modeling program and make it 1-to-1. So 1 meter is one length of the mesh in that program. I bring it into Unity and 1 will appear like 1 meter. But let's say I created a skyscraper in my, for example, Blender or Maya, but I didn't really care about the scale. Well, 1-1-1 scale could mean that, well, if it's scaled to 1, that's still 100 meters tall, right? So keep that in mind, that the scale isn't necessarily in a particular kind of metric. The default shapes in Unity do have some basis in the measurements, but not necessarily the 3D models that you bring into your environment. For example, this lumber wood, it's 1-1-1 pretty much. So if I even said it, the 1-1-1, you can see how the scale 1-1-1 XYZ is the same, but it's definitely a different shape. That's for sure. So yeah, just to give you an idea of what that's like. Now, apart from that, beyond this transform component, the other components you'll see will make it unique. So if I collapse these two things right now, these things listed here, so if I select something else, the things listed there, all these things listed, these are called components, with the exception of these circles, which I'll talk about later. These are called components. So let's take a look at this component. So transform, it's about its position, rotation, and scale. The light component makes this thing particularly unique. You can see the type of light it is, directional light, so controls the sun. If it was a spotlight, it would kind of light up a particular part of the scene. As you can see there, it's lighting up only a little bit of the scene instead. Oh, it's actually not fully there, so make it a little bit stronger and whatnot. But that's the idea. And you can edit a lot of properties regarding that light, such as how powerful it is, the indirect multiplier if it's bouncing light around, and a lot of other properties. Well, I'll leave the. So beyond that, we have the project window. Now, the project window, you can think of it as like a quick Finder tab or a file explorer built into Unity for you. It wouldn't show exactly everything you would see in a Finder or file explorer, but everything that's really useful to you, which is kind of more organized, better. Now, there's a console window. This console window, if you have errors in your code or some warning in a plugin, those kinds of things, they will show up here. They'll help you build your application properly. Okay, so those are the major windows you will see in Unity. Now, since Unity 2020, there was the asset store window, but it's been moved to be online. No longer shows you in Unity the things you can get. What is the asset store, though? On the Unity website, the asset store contains a bunch, and I mean a bunch. I mean thousands of assets for you to download. You can bring in 3D models of hands, cars, people, what have you, and it is very, very diverse. You can even bring in plugins that will help you create applications without coding. You can even get full applications into Unity that you can edit to create a customized version for yourself. For example, there's a VR paintball game available online, and with that, you can edit it to be a multiplayer game of something else, sword battles, for example. So those kinds of things are available to really speed up development and help you out. Now, beyond that, let's take a look at doing things in our scene. So for now, I'm going to start a new scene so I don't have all this garbage in there. So to start a new scene, I would go up to File, New Scene. Oh, there we go. And the empty scene or built-in scene, I'll just go with the built-in scene. It has the skybox and everything set up for me. So I'll go ahead and create that. I'm not going to bother saving that scene. That's fine. Okay, but now we know the windows roughly. There is more windows that you will come across through your life cycle, but let's get started at some point. We obviously can't cover absolutely everything in one workshop, but we'll do as much as we can. Okay, so now one thing I talked about were gizmos earlier. You can disable them on and off. These are things that represent icons that are not visible to you in the scene view or the game view. So we just have little options for that. And you can assign your own gizmos for objects that are empty as well. So first, how do we create an object in our scene? Now, if you have 3D models brought into Unity, what you would have done is you would go to your File Explorer. Let's go to CS, for example, or I'll go to Assets. 1 second. Pull that up. Okay, here we go. So let's say I go to my actual File Explorer or my Finder tab. I have any file here, any file. I can just decide I'm going to bring that into Unity, and all I have to do from my Finder, I would just say, okay, this is a nice picture I like. I'm going to drag and drop that into Unity. Boom. Now, in my 2D folder, I like to organize this. I have this nice little picture. The same way you can import 3D models, and you can bring them into your scene. For example, this one, I just bring that into my scene, whether from here or here. And there it is. It's in my scene. And I can do something with it, whatever it may be. Now, when it comes to 3D models in your scene, let's take a look at some key components that make it unique. Now, if I take a look once again at the inspector, I have the mesh renderer and the mesh filter. So the mesh filter is responsible for communicating the geometry of the object, how many faces, how many vertices, these kind of things. And the mesh renderer determines how each face appears. So in this scenario, everything is just white. There's no texture on it. There's no camouflage or a picture of something. It's just a plain white material. And you can see at the bottom, the material is listed. And you can, if it was not embedded, you could edit the material as needed. But that's the idea behind the 3D models and some of the components that make it unique. Let's ignore that for now. Let's take a look at just simple 3D modeling or creating in our environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over here, I'm going to create a 3D object cube for now. So we have a cube in our scene. That's how I created something. I just right click in here. I can go to 3D objects and create something, such as terrain as well. And that's looking good. I can also go up to game object here and create things in my scene. Go to the little plus symbol here and do the same. But I've got a cube in my scene and it gets created wherever my focus is. So if I rotate my scene here and I create a 3D object, boom, my focus is shifted and that's where it's going to be. Anyways, and if you lose track of an object in your hierarchy window, you can just double click on that object and boom, your view will snap to that object. Same thing with if your mouse is in the scene, you just quickly press F, boom, your view is snapped. Now, as a tool for those who are questioning this, you did Control Alt F or Command Alt F, and the object is out of focus, boom, it would snap to your focus instead of the other way around. All right, but anyways, so that's just making sure you don't lose track of your objects. Now, some basic methods of movement would include first, zooming in and out. You have your scroll wheel, your mouse wheel. You move that up and down to zoom in and out. Simple command to handle that. If you want to rotate your view left and right, you hold down the right mouse button and you can move your mouse around to do that. And if you want to pan, you can hold down the middle mouse button and pan around. Now, if you don't have a scroll wheel, the two things I mentioned about zooming in and out and panning can be achieved in a couple different ways. So first, if you can't pan around with your middle mouse button, there's a little hand tool here that allows you to do the same. And if you want, you can quickly hit the Q for Quebec key to switch to the hand tool. All right, that the hand tool being said, zooming in and out. You don't have a scroll wheel, how are you going to do that? Well, if you hold down the Alt key, and maybe the Option key for Mac users, you hold that key down and then right mouse button, move your mouse up and down, and you're zooming in and out. There you go. There's your alternative to having a scroll wheel. Now, I would highly advise getting a mouse if you're going to be developing. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, so we've covered a couple things there. So panning with the hand tool, you can left click. Middle mouse button works as well. Looking around, you can hold down the right mouse button and change your view. Zooming in and out with the scroll wheel up and down. But if you don't have a scroll wheel, hold the Alt key and then use your right mouse button up and down to zoom in and out. It does give you a lot more control. This is particularly useful when you're dealing with image targets in AR. And if you want to hold the Shift key, you can dramatically speed up the zooming process as well as the panning process. So that's just a side note. Shift key will speed it up. Okay, so those are some basic ones. I want to mention a couple more. If you have an object selected, you could press F to focus in on it. But there's another tool as well. If you have an object centered in your view, this is particularly useful. If you hold the Alt key, instead of right mouse up and down to zoom, you can hold the left mouse button to maintain your focus on that object, but still be able to rotate around it. Like Neo from the Matrix, when he was getting shot by all those bullets, you get that kind of effect going with this. Okay, great. So that is some basic navigation in your scene for some of the most advanced people. If you hold down the right mouse button, you can use the QWE ASD keys on the top left of your keyboard while holding down the right mouse button to fly around. The longer you hold them, the faster you go. Holding shift makes it faster. And the arrow keys do a very similar thing. However, I often find that no one really uses the arrow keys for that. But there you go. Flying around is a little bit more tricky, but once you get comfortable with it, really, really useful. Okay, great. So now we've got that out of the way. Let's take a look at manipulating objects in our scene. Now, if I select this cube or an object, I can select it from here within my scene view or from my hierarchy window. Whatever the case may be, I've selected the object. Now, at the top left of my view here, I have a few different options for manipulation of an object. One is the move tool, and I can use the W as a hotkey to quickly select that. I can also select the rotate tool, the scale tool, the rect tool, and all three at once, the first three at once, and some box collider tool, or you can create some more custom things there. But let's take a look at the move tool. So object selected, move tool, W for whiskey, shortcut for that. You'll see some arrows appear. Now the green arrow is the up direction. Now there is a couple things to keep in mind. Right now I have local enabled, but you might have global by default. What does this do? Well, let me show you. Let's say the object was rotated and I have global selected and I go to my move tool. Notice how there is a difference. This is up locally, but if I switch to global, this is up globally. So we'll keep that in mind as we do this. But there is the move tool. You can move an object around a plane or in the y-axis, up and down. Z-axis is going to be forward and back. And the red axis is the x-axis, right and left. Now, that is what the world considers forward, right, left, up, down. But based on the rotation of the object, that may be different. So the next tool I want to cover is E for echo, which is the rotate tool. You'll see these circles come around the object. Now, with that in mind, you can rotate an object around a particular axis. So I can rotate around the blue axis, which is rotating the object around the z-axis, and I can rotate the object in multiple axes, like so. Now, it becomes a little tricky when you're staying global. So if I stay local, it makes it a little bit easier to do what I want. But there we go. So now if I switch to the move tool, you'll see locally, the up axis definitely does not align with what the world considers up to be. That was the key difference now. Anyway, so that's the rotate tool. If you want to focus in more about that, you hold down the control key while you're moving this, you'll snap to 15-degree increments. That's a nice little bonus while you're holding control and using these tools. Now, the next one is the scale tool. Now you can scale across a particular axis, X, Y, and Z, or you can scale proportionally off all of them. Now, once again, if you hold the control key, you can snap these in this one is actually 100% increments rather than a particular amount, but that's the idea. Okay. All right, so I'm gladly to leave early. Okay. Oh, okay. One sec. Just got some questions in the chat. I'll have to check out during the Q&A session. Okay. So that being said, scale, move, rotate. Now you can get more complex with the rect tool, which allows you to kind of scale things with similar to how you would a Windows or any window on your computer. But I digress. Let's not get too in the weeds with this thing. That should give you some basics to get started. Let's take a look at manipulating a terrain, creating an environment in our world. Now, during our classes, we do get way more detail into this, making sure you understand and covering all the bases. But I do have a limitation. I don't have an hour and a half right now, so we'll try and go ahead. But that should get you some comfort during this process. Now, let's talk about terrain. Now, if you do want to create a terrain in Unity 2020 or 2021, it's very similar. What you're going to do is instead of creating a 3D object cube, we can create a terrain. All right, so let's do that. We'll go up to the top. We'll go to Game Object, 3D Object, and Terrain. we'll be able to create something in our scene. Now, one of the exercises I like having the students do after they've gotten comfortable with creating those cubes and such, I get them to create some more complex objects in their scene. This cube here, and I'm just going to make it smaller like this. I duplicate that and I move that up. There's a nice snapping tool if anyone's interested. While the move tool is selected, you hold down the V for Victor key. You can click on one of these vertices and snap an object together like that. That's a cool one. And then something like this happens, and you just scale that box up in some way. And you can start working on something towards the chair. Anyways, we'll move past that. Okay, but that is an exercise I would recommend going through once you have gotten comfortable with the navigation and manipulation of objects. It's a nice way to see, hey, am I actually comfortable? Oh, give that a shot. But I've created this massive object here, and I'm hitting F, and I don't even know where I'm going. Now, with terrain, it's basically wherever your mouse is hovering, that's where you're going to focus, just because it's such a large object. So we want to double click over here. Anyways, there is our terrain, massive. I think it's 500 meters by 500 meters, which is like, I'm not sure exactly, but it might be close to a third of a yard or 40% of a yard, something like, mile. But there we go, big terrain we've created. Now, if we take a look once again in our inspector window, you'll see a section called terrain. You'll see below that, if it's not expanded, you might see it like this. You want to expand that by clicking on it. You'll see a bunch of options here, similar to how we saw our tool options on the top left of our screen. Now, with these options, we can add neighboring terrain tiles. If I click on this, I can actually expand my terrain even more, and I can say, okay, add a tile over here. And it would basically be the same thing as this over here as well. However, it's particularly useful. Let's say you had edited the terrain already and you have some bumpiness here. If you create a terrain tile next to it, the bumpiness will be matched with this tile as well. So it'll look like a smooth transition. We'll take a look at that a bit later and, to get a better understanding of that. But that's the idea. You can create neighboring tiles to expand your landscape. But let's actually create some landscape. Let's take a look at this brush tool. Now, the brush tool here allows you to adjust the height of the terrain. It allows you to paint the terrain and some other things in the same manner, adjusting height and painting textures. Now, I'm going to go with raise or lower terrain as my first option. You can see there's actually a bunch of brushes for us to choose from to determine how we are going to raise the terrain. So you even have like a Voronil effect here. So if I was to go, and you can zoom in here and you can see my brush here, and it gives you a little bit of a preview. If you were to click, how would your terrain look now? It's been altered, as you can see. If I click again, it gives me an idea, a preview of it, and you can see how I'm starting to affect the terrain. So really cool tool to work with. That's one thing. And you can even add a new brush. You can draw your own kind of brush. The more white the portion is, the more of an impact it has on the terrain. The black parts have no impact on the terrain. So with that in mind, you can create some sort of fade effect. All right, and obviously there's some base properties here, the brush size. So really small right now. I'm just gonna whip that all the way up, and then my brush is bigger than my terrain. So with that in mind, let me try something a bit smaller, but not too small. There you go. So now you can see I have a much bigger brush, and this brush is really nice. It gives me a more natural look to my terrain versus something like this brush where you just get a very weird looking circle. Now, you may have also noticed how quickly my terrain is being is rising. That's because of the opacity. If I was to decrease that a lot, my terrain adjustment would be dramatically slower. So that's the difference there. Anyways, that's how you would create a hill if you wanted. Now, one of the things I recommend doing before you even touch your terrain is setting a height for the terrain. Now, I say that because Well, you can raise or lower terrain if it's higher than 0. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look. I want to increase the height of this terrain. Great. So I increase it a lot. All right. Now, I want to create a dip. So what do? I hold the shift key and then left click. Now you'll notice something. I can't make it any lower than this, right? That's it. This is the bottom of the barrel. Let's say I wanted to create some islands. I wanted to add some water. I'm basing it off the baseline. I can't nice and easily create dips in my terrain, which will make it tricky. So one thing I suggest right away doing is picking a height for your terrain. So where it says raise or lower terrain, I would instead start first thing doing is set the height. And then you choose how high do you really want it to be. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Let's go with height. I'm going to say I want my height to be 40 meters. And I will just say flatten this tile or flatten all the tiles. Won't make a difference right now because I just have one. So I'll flatten all. Boom. Now, I don't know if you caught that change, but notice how this point, that's where it was at the beginning. Now it's been pushed up to the top. So this whole mesh is now 40 meters higher. And the key difference is not only can I still raise the terrain, let me switch back to the raise tool. Not only can I raise the terrain still, I can actually hold the shift key and create dips in the terrain as well. So if we had a nice water level, you could create rivers as you go during your adjustment process. So that's number one, set your height. Now, what is number two? That is, if you're going to have it, create a water level. These two things are particularly useful for that, but in any situation, you should increase the height of your terrain if you're working with it. So let's take a look at creating our water level. I'm going to go ahead and if I do in my scene, I would right click in here and go down to 3D object and select plane. Now this plane is going to be incredibly tiny. And I'm going to rename it. If I select it, hit F2, I'm going to rename it to water. Now it's incredibly tiny and it appears black because it is underneath the terrain and the terrain is preventing it from being lit up. But anyways, really small because this terrain is massive. Now we could adjust the size of the terrain, but that's not fun. Let's keep it big and let's just make the plane really big. So selected the water tile. Thanks for listening. You're welcome, Tara. Now I'm just gonna increase the size a lot. So I select my scale tool and I'll just scale up the white one so that it's really big. Now, one thing we can do is that we know that this terrain is, I believe, 500. And I'm going to just double check terrain in my settings. I can check the scale here. The terrain width and length is 1000. Okay, so even bigger. And one thing I know is a plane in Unity is actually 10 by 10 meters. So if I did 1000 divided by 10, the scale of 100 on my plane would actually match the terrain size. Now, another thing to keep in mind is the center of our terrain is actually the center, but the pivot of our terrain, the pivot of our plane is the center, but the pivot of our terrain is the corner. So this one is located at 0, 0, 0, but this plane, for it to align with the terrain, it actually needs to be 500, 500. So that's just something you will take some time to figure out, but that's the idea. So what I would do is I'd set the position to half that of the terrain size in the X. The Y value would be my water height, so I'll say 35, for example, and my Z also 500. So now it's actually perfectly aligned with my terrain. So that's a good starting point for whenever you're working with it. Let me zoom out. Now, if I wanted, when I'm adjusting the terrain, I could create nice little water. We won't get too deep into that, but the idea is that we create a blue transparent plane. So in our assets folder, we should create a materials folder. You would do right click and create a new folder and name it materials. So I'm going to go to our materials folder. And what I would do is I would right click in here, create a new material. And that's how you can color things with these things. and I'll just call it water. So created a water material. If I go to my water plane, and let's zoom in on that. It's currently black, so I can't really see. So I'm going to temporarily disable lighting. You can see it's just this white plane. Now that I created this material, I called it water. I'm going to drag and drop it here. Well, it's just a white material. So that doesn't look like what I want it to. So I'll select this material and I can change a lot of its properties. One thing I'll do is the base map, I will change this white rectangle to a more bluish color. So that's looking a bit more like water. And if I want, I can make its surface type, instead of opaque, I'll make it transparent. And the same thing with this color, this little A value here, I can start to make it see-through. So make it just a little bit see-through, not too much. Anyways, that's just hidden underneath. So what do we do now? I'll re-enable lighting. So if I was now, with all that set up, if I select my terrain and go to my paintbrush tool and raise and lower terrain, I can I'm going to switch back to the Voronoi effect here. I can nicely raise my terrain. It's looking good. I'm going to increase the opacity a little bit and raise nice looking terrain. And now if I hold the shift key, I can create some nice little rivers as well. That is the effect you're able to achieve if you follow this initial setup. I was at the doctor's, just got back home, so I missed most of the video. Will this video be immediately available to the website? Yes, it will. It'll be same link that you're watching it here. And if you stick around for the Q&A, we're going to talk about some cool effects as well. But there you go. So that's how you would get a decent setup for your terrain. Now, when it comes to painting your terrain, we create what are called layers. So in our terrain tool, instead of the razor lower, we select paint texture. And our paint texture option is looking for a layer to apply to our terrain. Now, there isn't currently one selected. So what I'm going to do is say edit terrain layers and create a layer. Now, you'd want to have some kind of assets for the ground, and you can find those on the asset store. So if I was to show you that real quick, I would go to the asset store and we'd find some nice terrain assets. So I could just type in terrain in the asset store and you will see a bunch of options. So there's terrain tools, there's some examples, but I think if I type in terrain textures and I can sort by 2D, filter that, then I'm most likely only finding terrain layers. So things I can just nice and easily apply. Some of them will cost money and many of them will also be free assets. Boom. So you can start picking from some of these textures and bringing them into Unity. And what you'll do then is, now that you have them in your Unity project, you can say, okay, I'm in my paint texture section. I'm going to edit the terrain layers and I'm going to create a layer, and then whatever names you came across. One of mine was called ground. So there's ground albedo. So I'll click on that. And now my terrain, instead of being this weird checker pattern, as you saw earlier, instead of being this weird checkered one, it looks a little bit better. And now there's this kind of tiling that's happening, and you can adjust that in the layer itself so it doesn't look as strange. If I created the layer, you would see it in our folder somewhere. So let me go to this terrain and I will find this layer in our project. But here it is. I can decide to change the tiling. I can say, well, the size, instead of being 2 by 2, maybe I set it to 0.5 by 0.5. Sorry, I mean, I just did 5. I mean 0.5 and 0.5. So the amount of tiling is decreased. These kind of things you can start to edit and make it look closer to how you want. When a player is in terrain, they're usually really close to the ground. And so for them, it's much harder to notice the tiling than for us when we're really zoomed out. So keep that in mind. Has anyone checked out the mega bundle being offered on Unity? Any thoughts? Oh, we can definitely take a look at that after. But there you go. So that's setting up the textures. Now, if you want to paint the textures differently, because the first one you add gets automatically applied to the whole thing, edit terrain layer. I'll create another layer and let's add let me go with plywood. Nope, that's not the one I want. But I've lost track of the names, but let's just say I'll go with the plywood for now. And that, let's imagine that is our sand texture. Now, I would select it after creating it, and then I can just click and drag and paint that onto my terrain. And again, the brush that you're choosing is going to have a large impact on how you're painting it. Remember, the white portion is the strongest, the black portion is the weakest for our brush, and the gray portion is going to give you the fuzzy parts you're seeing on the end, which is particularly useful for when you're painting terrain. So it's not so drastic the way it's painted. There's a nice little blend happening in between the lines there. So that's painting the terrain. Finally, let's take a quick look at adding trees. And sorry, I'm rushing through this, so this is not looking particularly good for a terrain, but we can take a look at the other example after. Let's take a look at adding the trees. So I would click on this tree tool. Same way I added terrain layers, I would click edit trees here. I'd say add a tree. And this is the prompt that appears. I'm going to just click on this little circle here. And I'm looking for a tree. Looks like my ones are missing here, but I'm going to pull it up in the other project here so we can see it a little bit better. So if I wanted to add the tree, I would go to the tree tool. I would then select a tree by going to edit trees, add tree, and then in here, I would select the tree I want. So in this project, I do have some. So let's say I select this tree, bush 7. I've got it selected. There it is. I can just click on the X here, and bush 7 is now an option here. I select that, and then I can paint that tree. But got to be careful with how you're painting them. The bush 7 is rather small, so maybe I choose a slightly different option. I'll choose this tree here. So there you go. I've painted a bunch of trees. Now, if you were to just simply click and drag these, your density would be rather large. So keep that in mind when you're planting trees. You can add some variation for your tree density, how big your brush is, the height of these trees, and make it a little random between some ranges. So that's how you would go about adding trees in your scene. And let's talk finally about some grass before we move on. And then when we get into the Q&A, we can get into some really fun stuff as well. The grass. Now, the grass is actually a billboard texture, and we'll talk about that momentarily here. Let me just decrease the brush size a lot. Yeah, that should do it. Okay. So notice one thing about this grass. No matter what angle I'm looking at it from, it turns to face me. The idea is this gives the player an illusion of depth here. So when the player is walking through a bunch of grass, it looks like thick grass because it's always facing them, versus it looking very thin if it was not facing the player. It would look more like that. That's the idea behind a billboard texture, is just facing the camera all the time. Now, another thing about these, notice how when I move away from the trees far enough, the level of detail is decreasing. So that is an optimization technique that Unity employs to make it easier for your computer to render these things. And then for the details, this grass, after a certain distance, they just stop rendering altogether. You don't even see them from a distance because, well, it's not necessary for the player to see them from a really far distance. Once they get far enough away, well, there's no need to render them. That's the idea behind that. So with that in mind, those are the tools you would need to design your terrain. Hope you guys attend some more workshops, ask some more questions about this, check out more resources, try this out. That's how you will be successful in this. Give it a go and reach out to us. We have plenty of resources for you. Okay, so with that said, I'm closing that all up, but after the Q&A, we'll talk a little bit about this stuff, how awesome and fun it is. All right, there you go. Steph, I'll let you take back over here.
Right on. Hey, thank you so much, Ozzy. I remember learning this in our course and program when I took it a couple of years ago. I found it so fun to create, mountains covered in snow, little beaches at the bottom as well. So super exciting stuff. I hope you all learned a lot as well on how to navigate through Unity, start creating your own terrains as well. So I'm going to take about 5-10 minutes here just to wrap things up. Then we'll go to our Q&A session and answer some of the questions we have there. I did see some in the chat as well, but feel free to toss any questions you have. Any ideas that you want to potentially build in Unity or other engines, whether or not it is possible to do, just give us a shout. So with this, and Ozzy, just you're live again, but no, not a
Oh,
problem at all.
did you want me to? Okay, sorry, I thought we were doing Q&A right away.
No,
Oh,
not yet. Yeah, so 5-10 minutes here to wrap things up, but I'm gonna ask you all to go to the polls tab here again, if you don't mind. Now I'm gonna toss in a poll, and this poll really helps us understand whether or not we should continue hosting free workshops and webinars to people like you who joined us today. So this poll is going to ask on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being you wouldn't tell a soul, 10 being you would tell people. How likely are you to recommend this workshop to others? So just publish the poll. If you could go to the polls tab and let us know, that'd be great. Really helps us to see what we need to improve. Should we continue doing this or not? Do we bring in another host outside of me later on? Really helps us out see how well we did and whatnot. So thank you very much for taking the time to fill it out. But with this, I'm going to wrap things up with some resources, some next steps for anyone interested. Then we'll bring back Ozzy here. As I mentioned, we have some discounts that I wanted to share with you all today for our Introduction to Unity 3D Development course. This is something similar to what Ozzy quickly showed you today, a beginner-friendly live and online course and program to learn the fundamentals of Unity. There's 2 classes per week, an hour and a half each class, with daily open office hours for additional support outside of the classes and the Slack channel where our community lives. It's flexible, part-time, project-based, so we actually help come out with a small portfolio piece that you can show for afterwards. Lifetime access to all the class recordings, material, our community and Slack channel with industry recognized certifications. The course starts on November 29th, and we're currently offering it at 50% off for this course on November 29th. So it's going to be cut down from $2,500 to $1,250. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to download the syllabus. Check it out. One of our advisors will reach out, see whether or not it is a good fit, any questions you have to help answer. But if you're interested in Unity in general, not sure if you want to do AR, VR, not sure if you want to stick to traditional game development, this is the course for you. How to use Unity for any idea project that you're looking to build for, even outside of augmented reality and virtual reality as well. So with that, we do also have those 2 other courses I mentioned, our XR development with Unity course. This one's focusing on coding, scripting, programming, developing these VR and AR applications and projects specifically from scratch. This one's beginner friendly. Similarly, 2 1.5-hour sessions of live classes per week with instructors like Ozzy, daily open office hours, project based with several projects and portfolio pieces that you can come out with. And if you do select the option to have one-on-one sessions and support, we do offer it as well. And I see Dayon mentioned a little discount there as well. I'll be covering it here shortly too. But if you're interested in building VR and AR projects as a developer, learning C# coding and scripting in Unity, this is the course to check out, to look into. November 30th is when this one launches. Classes are Tuesdays and Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we do have our the interaction design and prototyping for XR course. This one focuses more on user experience for virtual reality and augmented reality projects. Really how to storyboard, prototype XR experiences from scratch. Doesn't dive into any C# coding and scripting, and really focuses on the design aspects when you're creating these experiences. 2 1.5-hour sessions as well, daily open office hours, project based. You'll come out with a couple of projects to show for your portfolio as well. And this one starts on November 8th. So if you're interested in checking that out, it is getting pretty close. But I'll mention the discounts we have available for these two courses here shortly. Now, just an example for what the interaction design and prototyping for XR course may look like. These are just some examples of how Michael, Vaishali, and Joshua started to storyboard and think about how users are going to experience the simulations and VRAR projects that they're building for themselves and maybe for the companies that they're working for as well. Here are some couple experience from Abe Trevino, also XR design and development student as well, doing some cool experiences that he's building specifically in VR there. So just wanted to share you some cool projects of what people are working on, how they're going about it, and planning it out. So no matter what course you may be interested in joining and attending, you will get industry recognized badges and the ability to take Unity's certified exams as well. And we'll actually cover those for you, the expenses of those exams for you. We built the exams for Unity. Our classes and courses will help you set up to not only be certified by us, but by Unity as well. So if it's the Unity 3D development course, that'll set you up for the Certified User Programmer certificate. The XR development course will set you up for the Associate Programmer certification. And the XR design course will set you up for the Professional Artist certification. Now, this one's still being in the works there, but happy to talk about that more. And where are students coming from, where they're going after? Here are some quick examples. We had Lee Walker join us earlier this year, who's now working at Kaleidoscope XR. Michael Oakes as well went from software engineer at a smaller company to working with Unity now. Andrew Alderete is an XR developer at Cine Concerts. We had Jennifer Swan get accepted to Oculus's Launchpad program, getting funding to continue supporting her dreams and work in XR. Similarly, Kim Albin, she started XR design as a product designer, now creates YouTube videos. Feel free to check her out. She's got a lot of great content on our YouTube channel. And Mike Waldron, from Lockheed Martin engineer to an owner of a VR studio based out of Canada now as well. So all walks of life, people joining us. And again, we will welcome everyone and anyone and love to support you with any of the work and ideas that you have. Now, our community, this is a big factor as well. We have a large community, not only on Slack, but people we can network and collaborate with you and introduce you to. Daily open office hours as well. And we have events throughout the year, throughout the month, each month as well, from VR coffee hours, completely in virtual reality, show and tell, where people will show what they're working on, get feedback, demo days, so people will be presenting to other employers what projects they've built. Employers are always seeking out new VR/AR talent. Local meetups, people meeting up together wherever they're living for some coffee, beverages, food, or other meals. And we have speaker events with XR companies as well, where we have companies joining us to hear out our students, speak to what they're working on, and looking to hire our students as well. Now, as Dan kind of tossed into the chat here, we are also currently offering 10% off of our XR development with Unity course and our interaction design and prototyping for XR course. Now, we have two bundles. The first bundle, 10% off at $35.55. And this includes the development course or the design course and a Unity certification exam that we will actually cover the cost for you. Now, we do have a plus package, which includes everything in the starter pack and a C# course, 4-week C# course, an Oculus Quest 2 headset we will reimburse for you, and 10 hours of one-on-one sessions with one of our team members and experts, AR, VR, and game developers here at Circuit Stream. So this 10% off is currently live for you all here who joined us today until next Friday. So if you're interested in learning more about it, we do also offer some payment plans and financing options. Split it up into 3 months, 6 months, or over the year, 12 months if you'd like. But and if we do have those colleagues, a team looking to learn all together, work on a project together, just upskill yourselves to start working on game development or VR/AR at the company, we do offer these opportunities as well. Those live one-on-one sessions, you can take them outside of the courses and programs as well. We'll cover Unity or Unreal content, really anything you want to focus on. We will help you in those one-on-one sessions. So if you're interested in checking out the syllabus, speaking to one of our members, or applying to the course, feel free to check it out, circuitstream.com/learning. We would love to have you with us and to see what projects you come out and build. So one of our team members will be happy to speak with you, whether it's Roham, Tyler, or Brendan. They're on the admissions team. Lovely gentlemen that would love to chat about our programs with you, see what questions you have, answer those questions as well. Now, one thing I wanted to quickly add as well, we have a Circuit Stream open house. We're going to specifically be going into the XR development with Unity course. What's the course about? What are the contents, the outcomes, who's in it, what can you do after, what skills do you build? Answering any and all questions that you may have around the XR development with Unity course and meeting the team as well. So it'll be a similar style to this live workshop or more so webinar where we'll talk about the programs, student stories, the industry news, where the industry is going, and answering all the questions you may have there as well. So thank you all for joining. Let's open it up for Q&A right now. If you do have any questions, though, after this workshop and webinar, join us on Slack. Reach out to us over our website. We'd love to chat with you about any of those questions you may have. And Ozzy, great seeing you here again. Let me just close off this slide. There he is, man. I love seeing you, Ozzy. Always good.
Thank you, Steph. Likewise.
Of course. So got a couple of questions here and some in the chat as well. And again, feel free to toss in any questions you all may have. We'd love to answer them for you. But Emiliano had a question when you were using, I think you were trying to select the texturing potentially. Emiliano was asking, can you use a picture to create a material?
Great question. Yes, 100%. And I'll show you how right now. The beauty of real-time workflow here. All right, let's see here. Okay. Oh, I think this is an older version of Unity. Process is still the same, but I do want to keep it up to date. So let's say I have this thing going here and I'm creating a new material. So if I wanted to create a new material, I want to apply it to some object perhaps. Let's say, I think I'm upside down. Let's say this thing here. This object I want to apply a new material to. So I could apply create a material. It's looking good, and I'll just call it, M, for example. Doesn't matter, but I can click and drag it here. Boom. Okay, so the material's applied, but I got no texture. So what I could do is say, okay, well, I want it to be an image, and this can get a bit more complex when it comes to 3D models. Let's say I have this boiler control panel. I'm going to just drop that into my project here. And if I select M here and I scroll down in the inspector window, one of the things you'll see is the base map property under surface inputs. Now, it's slightly different. It's called albedo in the standard render pipeline or the legacy render pipeline. But here it's base map. Now, to the left of it, there you can put any image you like, and I can just drag and drop that into there, and boom. You can see that placed on this cube. Nice little picture. Now, if you wanted to just be one face, you may want to use something like a quad or a different kind of shape instead of a cube. But yeah, that's the idea.
Very cool. Thank you, Ozzy. Hopefully that helps answer your question there, Emiliano. But do let us know in the chat if you have any other questions. We'd love to answer those for you. Thank you, Ozzy. Always helpful. Let's see, Emiliano. Great. Thanks. Anytime. One here from Ulysses. Ulysses is asking, do you recommend we create terrains in Unity instead of using a third-party program like Blender? Pros and cons.
Great question. So when it comes to terrain in Unity, it's really well integrated. It works nicely. One of the really good benefits is that auto LOD adjustment. You create a tree, you get far enough away, that tree's quality decreases, so it's not taking up as much rendering power. And Unity has a terrain editor, a terrain collider. that will match your terrain's collision space with its shape. And one of the really cool things about that is it can be dynamic. You can have it change in real time. Now, doing that kind of thing outside with a 3D modeling tool would be incredibly expensive, incredibly difficult. So that is definitely one pro for Unity. However, creating 3D models outside of Unity is way more uh, open, more accessible, because you can create something like a hole and create a cave inside of a terrain. These kinds of things are actually really hard to do in Unity, creating a cave. So these are tools that are still in development in Unity and still experimental. So you have a lot more freedom in how it looks when you're using Blender. You can get even better looking terrains and such in Blender or Maya, whatever. But you have such an easy tool that is there for you in Unity. So that's how I would weigh it back and forth.
Perfect. Hopefully that helps, Ulysses. Do let us know in the chat because I do see you just posted another question here. And I'm sure you saw this one in the chat as well, Ozzy. Has anyone checked out the mega bundle being offered on Unity and any thoughts around
All right, let's take a look at this bundle.
it?
All right, pick your bundle, 25, 35, 45. All right, these in prices, we got Vault Inventory, Better UI, Enhanced Scroll Bar. Okay, this is definitely things you can work on your own. But if you're not an artist, this becomes really valuable.
Mhm.
Um, this enhanced scroll bar is a bit more programmer intensive, but these are all things for typically mobile dev. If you are targeting mobile dev, this would be nice. I wouldn't pay this much for it though. But yeah, especially since it's a globally available tool, to buy this from a artist who's making it solely for you would cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So if you're looking for some cheap alternative to hiring someone, this is definitely a good choice. But I don't think this is where you'll get most of the value out of this. Monk productivity commands. Um, I think this is really based on how you're going to, what you're targeting. Endless runner engine, like these seem all targeted towards mobile developers actually. Easy decal, that's kind of nice. But I think there are cheaper alternatives. I guess the bundling is where you're getting the best benefit. Um, everything for only $45. Okay. What do we got here? Dino Fracture, Dynamic Fracture Library. Okay. Matching, Acid Hunter Pro, Dungeon Architect. Oh, that's nice. Performance tools. That's pretty good. Realistic eye movements. Okay, that's just kind of creepy. Um, Digger Pro. Yeah, this is really good. I think this $45 bundle for some of these things is amazing. Yeah, I would definitely guess this $45 one. But again, this is largely if you're not comfortable making this stuff on your own. To be honest, though, Dungeon Architecture, Digger Pro, these two are really good. I would, yeah, 45 for these two together, worth it, worth it. These other ones, I don't know, they're really, if you're targeting mobile dev, maybe you need these things. You really should check though, like, because it isn't such that just because it's Vault Inventory that necessarily it has everything you need. The nice feature is that it's kind of programmed for you and you would handle what images you have. But honestly, it isn't like really that good if you're spending 25. Like it's not something you would probably buy for that much anyways. But I think this bundle is really nice. It's totally worth it for just these two. Mesh Slicer is also really cool. So yeah, I think this bundle is definitely worth it. But I wouldn't bother with these two.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks for the insight, Ozzy, and thanks for sharing this, Ulysses. I had no idea myself. 3 days, maybe I'll get back into Unity myself. Awesome. Well, hey, great question there. We have another one from Taufik. Taufik, great to see you join us here today. Quite late for yourself in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. But a question here from Taufik. How easy is it to import medical images, such as CT scans, as 3D objects into an XR application? can these types of 3D images be overlaid, for example, over a person?
Okay, so importing medical images, 3D models, it's the same. Very easy, just drag and drop. What's really important is the file format. If you want to bring in a 3D model, it has to be an FBX file or an OBJ file. These two formats are what Unity accepts. There are tools out there called Pixie,
Yep,
something like that.
Pixies. Yep.
Yeah, that will help convert these formats to FBX or OBJ. So if they're not that, that can be expensive and difficult, but otherwise FBX, OBJ is totally fine. And Unity can handle pretty much any image format, so that's not a difficult thing for sure. But objects into an XR application. So when it comes to bringing them into an XR application, really the only difference would be setting up your XR environment. And then there's nothing really different at that point. If you're using certain render pipelines, you may have to do this one thing, which I'll show you here. So let's say, for example, you brought in an object and it comes with a material that's looking like this. So you have this material. If you were to put it on something, you would be like, oh no, why is it pink? That's looking horrible. In your scene, that's probably the only thing you'll experience when it comes to issues with bringing in objects because of the rendering pipeline you're using. So you could say edit. Let's go to, where is it? Render pipeline. I think my screen has become too small. But yeah, edit, and then you're looking for render pipeline, universal render pipeline, upgrade project materials to universal RP materials, and then all the materials that appear to be pink, they become normal again. So that's one thing you might have to do based on the render pipeline. There's an extra step when it comes to embedded materials. So if you have ones that are still pink even after doing that, what you may have to do is, there's my models. Let's find a 3D model in here. So for example, this rock model, one thing you might have to do is see it. So standard, what I had to do was under materials, I first had to make this model extract its material. So I have to first extract. If a model is staying pink, I select it, I extract its materials under the material section in the inspector. Then I once again can go render pipeline and upgrade the project materials to make it not pink. So that might be an issue you come across with certain model imports, but otherwise you're fine. There's no real difference. Setting up your XR environment is the actual thing. Once that's set up, it doesn't matter what you're importing. Well, as long as the proper file type. Can these type of 3D images be overlaid, for example, over a person? So there are body tracking capabilities in augmented reality, AR Foundation, AR Kit, AR Core, and I think Vuforia and OpenCV. There exists this technology that will allow you to overlay this technology on a person. And I'll give you a really bad example. I don't think I'll show the student off, but I'll show my terrible attempt at it. There we go. So that's me using body tracking in its current state. Not great. Doesn't really do a great job at tracking your body. I definitely could adjust it, but having wings behind me was the idea. So I can have them in front of me if it may be what you want. But that was the idea. Let me just open up the browser. Just lost you guys here. Where did you go?
We're here.
Oh, no, I got the browser minimized. Okay, there we go. I'm back. Okay. But yeah, so there's definitely body tracking able to do that. There's face tracking as well. So you can overlay on a person's face and have their mouth and eyebrows being tracked uniquely. And wow, what's it called? Snapchat does something like that. And then you can use image targets. A great example, one of the funnest things I've seen is Augmetics. Oh, Sugmetics is not what I meant to write, but Augmetics. There we go. This company is giving doctors X-ray vision, essentially. So instead of doctors' traditional use, where they're drilling over here and they're looking off in the screens, what ends up happening is they instead use markers on the patient, and they give the doctor an augmented reality headset, and they just look at the patient And this is what starts to happen. The doctor now basically gets x-ray vision, all the panels, all there, making their job a lot safer, a lot better, more accurate, these kinds of things. So I think I've thoroughly answered that question, hopefully.
Let us know in the chat, Taufik, if you're still tuned in, hopefully.
I
Um,
hope that did it.
there he is, to see him typing. Good news, good news. Perfect. Let's see. We've got another one from James as Taufik's typing. James is asking, maybe you could shed light on this, Ozzy, and some things I came across earlier this year. Who are some top employers of Unity developers, and how much can an experienced Unity developer make? I'm an experienced web developer, and I'm concerned about whether I'd be taking a big pay cut or if the salaries are comparable. So I'll quickly touch up on the salary side of things. And oh my God, what's my phone just started talking to me? Uh, salary wise, it really ranges. I had a meeting with an organization earlier today, actually. Their AR/VR engineer roles were starting at about 105K US. Um, so you can probably see about 100,000 as a starting. I might be wrong, Ozzy. You've been in the space as a developer longer. And in terms of what top employers are looking for Unity devs, it's I mean, Facebook, Google, Apple. What are some other big ones?
Unity themselves.
Unity themselves, yep, massive as well. Lots of companies. Again, 60% of the world's AR VR content is built with Unity. So the vast majority of these large enterprises investing in XR are likely to be hiring Unity talent. But Ozzy, feel free to add any of your insights there.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a good question for people looking to transition. It obviously one of the key factors will be location. Where are you being hired? I remember getting a junior position offer when I first started out for 115 USD in San Francisco, right? And so it's really crazy out there as an XR developer in particular. Unity developer ranges even more. But I remember Google, their Android department offered me a position starting at $125,000. And so, it can, even if you're a XR developer, the range, it starts a lot higher just because it's such a niche right now. But a Unity developer, it can range from the lowest I've seen is maybe 68,000, and the highest I've seen is like maybe 180,000. That was something, I think that was kind of comparable. And then you can also start your own company doing this kind of thing, and then you make whatever you feel is good. People created Beat Saber, for example. People who created that were Unity developers, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yep.
Yeah, and then they made millions of dollars, right? So,
yeah. So hopefully that helps out, James. But great question. Always a great question. It really ranges between companies, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Perfect. So let's see. Looks like those were all the questions in the questions tab. Let me just go up. We had Anthony gave a shout out in the chat here as well for an opportunity as teaching assistants for anyone who may have some Unity experience or maybe going through our courses and programs and interested in teaching others. Feel free to check out his comment there. But I think that's it. If there are any last minute questions, do hit us up in the chat or the questions tab. But with that,
I'll do a quick little thing I
of
promised
course,
I would do at
yes,
the end
yes,
there.
do it.
Okay, so if you're not a programmer, totally fine as well, because there is a demand for what are called technical artists. They get paid big bucks as well. And one of the things that they do is create these often interactable but unique effects that show up in their scene. So, for example, these wouldn't be overly complicated, but if I click this has a unique interaction. If I move this around, you get a weird effect here, right? Like that, for example, interactive. This one, for example, is another effect that's just using shaders. So it like builds back up. This phosphate shader here. So anyone looking for the XR game jam, this is a good place to go. Water and realistic water effects, dissolve effects, force field effects, glowing effects. This is just a person's size. I don't even know what that is, but like distance of like hearts being left behind, portal effect, sparks colliding with VFX graph, which is a little bit trickier to do than the shuriken system. Fire, lightning, swarm effect, another effect that's interactive where you touch this wall, and then this other thing here on the other side starts to move with you, and colors change based on the speed, right? So you can have a nice interactive feel there. It's pixelated loading here. Nice black hole effect. This is another interactive shader and VFX graph combination where you leave behind a trail. A nice combination of lightning VFX, glowing VFX, and shader effect for the lightning on the thing, and then similar to the snow, but having that kind of movement feel, and a 3D 360 shader that you can feels like you're entering a portal, that kind of thing. So these kinds of effects, actually, I didn't code like for a couple of them, like this one, I may have coded a couple lines of code. Can't recall anything else being coded, but all these kinds of things are effects that you can achieve. Oh, this one was actually pretty tough. You have a transparent plane that you cast a shadow onto, because that's great for augmented reality to get shadows of the objects you're placing in the world. But yeah, all these kinds of things are what a technical artist would do. They would provide a really nice addition. They would give you a really nice addition to whatever Unity project you're working on, and they themselves, they can get an insane salary as well. And the kind of things you do with that are done node based. So if I take a look at, for example, a crossfade shader, that's what making one looks like. It's kind of understanding what these blocks are and using them together to create this kind of effect, right? So that's part of the idea. It's like you are creating these to create shaders, and with enough practice, you can create all kinds of shaders. When it comes to the particle systems that you've seen, let's see, these come by themselves, and then you're just kind of altering them a little bit, maybe changing some here and there, and that can give you a very different effect as well. So the idea behind this is, it's not necessary that you have to learn coding to break into this industry. There's a lot you can do if you don't want to code, but I would recommend you learn anyways, because it will broaden your field for sure. But I just wanted to show that to some people who never want to code either. So it is possible to break in without that knowledge. But again, suck it up, learn to code. It's great.
It'll only help. It'll only help. But no,
Oh, yeah.
this is super valuable. Thank you, Ozzy. And we actually got a question here as you were presenting that, and it looks like it'll be the last question here for today. But this one's from Ian, and Ian's asking, can you use a different texture on different faces?
That's great. That is a good question. Now, there's many ways to go about doing that. It's not something Unity really offers on its own. Let me see if I can pull up an example of that in the scene. Okay, for example, this guy here. So this is using one material, but its texture is very different. So if I take a look at this this car model, it's got only two textures on it, but the material, as you can see, is very complex in comparison. The idea would be, and I actually think if I open up Blender, this might express the point a little bit better. Let's see here. None of those files are what I want. I'll open up something else. Let's see here. Halo. one is probably the best, or the boat one. Boat. Let's do something like this. Okay. So I have this 3D model, and it's supposed to have a texture on it. Oh, this is not the one. Sorry about that, guys. Bear with me as I try to find the right one, but I'll try to go with Halo Blade one because I know that one's fine. Okay, let's up this. So the idea behind this, and the idea here is, let me open this up. You can what's called unwrap a material. So this one, as you can see, has many faces. Face here, face here, face here, face, so forth, because it is definitely a more complex geometry. The one in Unity is just one face. And you can apply a picture to one face, but if you did want to customize it a lot, you could what's called unwrap it and then design each face to be differently. And then you end up with an image here. And this 3D model has been unwrapped in such a way that if you give it an image, the image will apply certain pixels to each face. So it's a little complex to explain really quickly, but yes, you can. But if you're using just Unity, using the Unity cube, it's unwrapped in such a way that you can only apply it to one face. So if I was to show you an example of that, let me just create a general one, not save. So this cube, for example, is not even unwrapped. But if I wanted to, I could say, unwrap. And you know what? I'm going to unwrap it from a particular angle. Unwrap from project from view. Okay, let's do that. And this thing that I've unwrapped, if I go to the whole mode for UV editor, so for this character here, I've unwrapped it. So if I give it an image, this I would put in here. I would put an image, and on the image, I would paint something in here, and that would be applied to this face. But because I unwrapped it this way, that same image would be applied to everything. But let's say I unwrap it a different way. I unwrap it, let's say, Smart UV project. Now, notice how I have, 6 faces here. So now if I give one image and each section here I paint differently, that would me be painting each face differently. That would be the idea. So it's a matter of unwrapping your image a certain way, and this is a bit more of a complex process, but short answer, unless you can create some complex shader in Unity, you can't really do that with a simple cube in Unity. You would need to unwrap it in a 3D modeling program. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, well, let us know if that helped there, Ian. But it makes sense to me. It does. It does.
Okay.
Blender's
Cool.
a little more powerful on that side of things, eh?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, hey, I think that was it from the chat and the questions tab. I see Ian's typing, so we'll just wait for this to pop up. But in the meantime, um, thanks. That's it. He said, "Thanks, Ozzy."
All right. Great. I'm
Perfect.
glad we got through answering all the questions. I didn't want to miss anything.
Perfect. Well, hey, Ozzy, first of all, thank you very much for your time here today. Really appreciate all the insights and questions that you were helping answer. And to everyone who's still tuned in here, thank you so much for joining us on another Circuit Stream workshop. We do hope to see you on other future workshops, if not even our courses and programs as well. But I really do appreciate everyone sticking around. I hope you learned a lot. Dayon, thank you for your support in the background there. And Ozzy, again, really appreciate your help. This couldn't have been done without you, really.
Oh, no, I'm super happy to do these, man. They're a bunch of fun.
Perfect. Well, hey, have a wonderful evening, day, morning, night, wherever you're currently located in the world. And we do hope to see you again soon. So be safe, stay healthy, have a great weekend as well. And we hope to see you all very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take